After returning to the world of Magic the Gathering drafting, Wilds of Eldraine marked the most enjoyment I've had in the game in several years to come. But with the closest in-person opportunity to qualify for a major event being over 90 miles away from my house, the MTG Arena Open marked the last competitive opportunity that I'll have for the rest of this set. It's your boy Beats by Ash, back at it again with another banger of a video, and I am just fresh off of 2 runs in the MTG Arena Open. Unfortunately, things did not go as planned. In the first run, I ended up going 5-3, just close off of that day 2 run, and in the second one, I ended up going 4-3 with a deck that I think was just an overall way worse pool. And today I wanted to try something a little bit differently. Instead of just showcasing you guys what went wrong live, like we just literally can't let that live. Holy crap, this guy's hand is literally insane. Double Cut and Twisted Sewer Witch. Let's look at this guy's deck. He has a Lord Skitter. He also has a Bitter Blossom. Oh my gosh, this guy's deck is crack. I just want to take you guys through the pools that we were offered and take you guys through my thought process on how I navigated through these pools to come up with the final lists I had, and potentially we'll find out something that we maybe could have done differently. So without further ado, let's head over to Sealed Deck Tech and get into the goo. Alright guys, we are back on Sealed Deck Tech, and this first pool we're going to be going over is the one that I had 5 wins with. We ended up getting a pretty decent blue-black style of deck with a splash of the Goose Mother. And for anyone who wants to find out how to take your arena sealed decks and your draft decks onto Sealed Deck Tech, make sure to stay till the end of the video because I will do a quick demonstration on how you can do that. But looking at this first pool, this is the deck that we ended up coming up with, and I will say this is the better of the 2 pools. Now, I want to just start off by clearing out this deck and just going over our rares and taking you through how I would approach this pool from the ground up. So taking a look at our rares and mythics here, the ones that do stand out are the Goose Mother, Godric Cloaked Reveler, Horned Lockwhale, and Archon of the Wild Rose. So overall, some pretty decent rares to start out with here. Obviously, Oversold Cemetery does have some niche utility in some more attrition-based black-green decks. And then Elusive Otter is, you know, just a decent include in any style of green deck in general. You don't really need to be able to play the blue side of this, but you don't really want to splash this, I would say, in most non-green decks. And then the Restless Spire is one that can help you facilitate fixing if there's a large incentive there, but I think most of the time this is going to be the worst of the multicolor animation lands, so that probably is not something I'm looking to include at first glance. And the Necropotence is one you just don't really want to play. Taking a look at our pool after we've discussed our rares, I kind of like to just sort things by their game in hand win rate provided by 17 lands, just to see what kind of cards we are going to be incentivized to use in each of the respective colors. So first off here, we've got the Horned Lockwhale and the Goose Mother. If we can play both of those, we definitely want to, I think so, because these are some of the higher quality rares and mythics in the set in general. One of my favorite aspects of Wilds of Eldraine is that the bombs are not auto-win on the spot for the most part because of how fair and balanced the removal is in the lower rarities. We've also got Welcome to Sweet Tooth, which is a really strong incentive to be green. And then we've got a Torch the Tower, an incentive to be red, as well as a Godric. For black, we've got 2 copies of Candy Grapple, as well a copy of High Fae Negotiator. These will typically make any kind of black main color deck. For white, we've got Archon of the Wild Rose. For blue, we've got the Hatching Plans. Really looking like using blue of some sort is going to give us the highest combination of our most powerful rares and, you know, higher win percentage cards. Also, black is looking pretty strong just because removal is really premium and sealed compared to draft, and Candy Grapple is one of the best of those that you can have. Torch the Tower is amazing as well, and Lord Godric is really good in most aggressive red decks, but in any deck that red isn't your main color, since this is double pip, it's not really something that has a justifiable splash, but if your deck can play it for free, it's definitely, you know, a strong inclusion for sure. Now that we've gone over our highest incentives to play each color, I just want to go through and go by the colors to see what each one of them offers. We're gonna go ahead and start off with blue here. All right, so we're gonna just keep the Goose Mother in here since, you know, if we're playing blue, we're always playing the Goose Mother. If either of these colors are not completely dead in terms of their depth, this is just one that you automatically want to include. And if we can make the Horned Lock Whale our primary color, then this is going to be a really, really amazing card because it fills multiple gaps in the curve. We've got 2 copies of Bitter Chill, which in my opinion is highly underrated for its win percentage. I think this card is one of Blue's more premium removal spells since they don't have many. We've got 2 copies of Ice Out, which is, you know, a card that I think at least one fits into most Blue decks. 2 copies of Johan's Stopgap, one of Blue's more premium removal spells alongside Bitter Chill, and it gives us that bargain value for the hatching plans. A Tenacious Tome Seeker works really well with the amount of high quality spells we've got here. 2 copies of Balluna Gatekeeper, a decent top end card that has some utility in the early game, exactly what you're looking to have in Blue. Other than that, I don't really see a lot of other things going on in our Blue. There's a couple of cards here like Merfolk Coralsmith, which is one that I think I'm willing to include if we have to. Don't really see any need to play the misleading motes here. Motes is kind of just the more clunky, less utility based version of Johan's Stopgap. Could easily see us playing all of these cards, and in fact in my final list I ended up doing so. 12 is a pretty good base amount to have in one color for your above average playables as one of your primary colors. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what our black offers. Blue black is probably the best combination in conjunction with blue in my opinion. Obviously we're going to play these Candy Grapples and this High Fae Negotiator. Fairy Dream Thief is another automatic include for sure. Baronati goes well with the Dream Thief and the Negotiator here. We've got a Taken by Nightmares to go along with our 2 copies of Johan's Stopgap, increasing the value of the Tenacious Tome Seeker. Other than that, there's not really any other black cards that I really want to include. In my final list, I did end up putting in Lord Skitter's Butcher, just because as you can see with these cards we've got going on here, we have a very high bargain count. You know, we have the 2 Ice Out, the 1 Tome Seeker, 2 Johans, you know, that's already 5 bargains, and then the 2 Candy Grapple brings us up to a total of 7 bargains. And you know, blue doesn't offer many bargain fodders, which is one of the downfalls of blue in this set in my opinion. And we have a hatching plan, so we really do want to be very high in bargain here. We've got the Prophetic Prism and the Collector's Vault here, which allow us to more easily enable our Goose Mother. Collector's Vault is one that you don't always want to play in your blue-black decks if you don't have like a high incentive to splash. It is one that makes our Goose Mother relatively free, and with the high amount of bargain effects in this deck, I think it's very justifiable. So the final card I ended up including in this build here was the Living Lectern. I just wanted to have another card that allowed us to put down a body before turn 3. As you can see, if we get to the late game, we're probably going to be winning that game. Now, one of the biggest deficiencies with this style of deck is that we only have one form of card advantage in the form of our hatching plans. I think if this deck had 1 copy of Into the Fey Court, this would be an insane hit. But we also, you know, we don't have any spell stutters. If we had another Baronati, that'd be insane, or even a spell scoring Coven. Overall, like, we're just 1 card away from having the optimal amount of card advantage engines. In most of my high win rate blue draft decks, I wanted to have at least 2 to 3 of any combination of hatching plans and Into the Fey Court for card advantage. And then I also wanted to have some amount of Johan's Stopgap, a couple of spell stutters and an Ice Out, a couple other top end cards. So this is pretty close to what you would want in blue. One of the other issues here is that obviously we didn't have that many high value early game bodies, so we did end up having to play the Ice Row Synergy and the Lord Skitter's Butcher, which really has no synergy for us other than just creating a rat as a bargain fodder. Now, some of the disadvantages of running this color pair with our pool is that, you know, we're leaving a couple rares in the sideline in the form of Godric and Archon of the Wild Rose, which are, you know, extremely high value standouts. We're also not able to play the Torch the Tower, which our red did provide, you know, some decent removal and some decent fixing, because, you know, we also have this Flick a Coin, and we also have 2 copies of Redcap Thief and a Grabby Giant, which Grabby Giant is just a really good, you know, alternative win condition in a more attrition based red deck. Our green pool wasn't bad, it just had no top end, and so that really de-incentivizes us from, you know, using a higher amount of green cards and like splashing blue for the Goose Mother, which I think is probably more preferable for the Goose Mother itself. Overall, I think that this configuration is one of the better things that we could do with this pool. Now, I do think there was some merit for us playing the Torch the Tower as a splash here. I think splashing Grabby Giant is also justifiable if we want to cut Balloonist Gatekeeper here or something. I think that Grabby Giant is a substitute for our lack of card advantage. One thing I did forget to mention about this pool is we also have a copy of Evolving Wilds. Now, the biggest reason I didn't include these red cards, I wanted us to have the most streamlined mana base as possible, considering it is best of one. Now, let's take a look at an alternative configuration. Now, I think that the next color that has the highest card quality is our red pool. So we have one copy of Twisted Fealty, one Towards the Tower, the Godric, the Flick a Coin, Edgewall Pack for an aggressive deck, 2 copies of Redcap Thief to enable that splash ability, the Grabby Giant, and as well as the Frantic Firebolt, a good inclusion if we're playing blue. And, you know, we don't want to leave those rares on the sideline because I do think the Goose Mother and the Horned Lock Whale are some of our most powerful cards in this pool. I really wanted to make a more aggressive style deck. We didn't have as many 2-drops as I would like in a red-black aggressive style deck. And, you know, we have one Grabby Giant, one Edgewall Pack, so we're not really decisive on whether we want to be attrition based or if we want to be all out aggressive. But let's see what this looks like if we included black here. Now, as you can see, this is close to what a skeleton would look like for us if we wanted to run this configuration here. And you'll see that we are really close to being able to play an all-out red-black deck. We have 4 total ways to make a treasure. The splash ability is there to play the Goose Mother, and we've got the Prof Prism. Although it is not ideal, the power level really justifies it. And I'm being very liberal about what cards we're including with the one non-crescendo and the one bespoke Battle Garb. We only have 13 creatures. I think that's just a little bit too low to justify this style of deck. I don't think it really compares to what our blue offers. It seems like our red just didn't get there. The cards that we have are of higher quality, but they're going in different directions. I don't really think that this was the correct answer. So as you can see, our green really just has like 7 playables. We have the Sweet Tooth, the Hollow Scavenger, Brave the Wilds, a Beanstalk Worm, and that's literally it. So green is basically just out of the question. One other thing that I do think was possible was a blue-red style deck splashing some of our better black cards. So let's take a look at what that would look like. So after adding in all of our red cards combined with our strong blue skeleton, this is what I ended up coming up with. We've got the 2 copies of Candy Grappler in there as a high value splash, and considering we have 4 ways to make treasure, I do think it's justifiable. Now, the 3-drop slot is a little bit clogged in this kind of deck, and we've only got 9 creatures. We do have the added utility of playing the Restless Spire, and then we've still got the Evolving Wild. I do think there was a way that we could play this. I'm not sure if this was the best configuration for us, but you might think so. Make sure to let me know down below what your opinion is. Did I make the right decision, or is this the one we should have went with? Moving on to our second run, I think this pool was way worse off, and you're about to see why. This is what we ended up coming up with here, which is mainly a green-black base deck with 2 Evolving Wilds and a splash of 1 Torch the Tower, 1 copy of Witchstalker Frenzy as well. And I don't think there was really a lot going on here, but let's take a look. Starting off with our rares, they are much worse this time around. We've got a 3 Blind Mice, pretty stand out amongst this pack of cards. We've got a copy of the End, you know, just an on-level removal spell. It's decent, but you don't want to go out of your way to play this if it's not one of your main colors. Tangled Colony, one of the better rares. We've also got an Elvish Archivist, which I think is decent depending on how many synergies your deck has. We also have another copy of Godric as well, a Rowan Scion of War. If we're playing red-black, you know, cool, we'll throw that in there. It's a decent stat line. And then Fraying Sanity is just completely unplayable. From these rares, you know, I'm immediately drawn to playing red-black or green-black, and that's basically what we ended up doing. One of the worst things about this pool is that I think our colors are very evenly distributed in what they offer, which is not what you want to see, especially when you don't have the best green cards or best incentives to be splashing. Now that we've looked over our rares, let's go ahead and look at our highest incentives to be within each color. So starting off, obviously, Godric, one of our highest win percentage cards, and then Torch the Tower, an Agatha's Champion, and as well an Ash. Other than that, we've got the 3 Blind Mice, which is pretty nice, the Tangled Colony, the Witchstalker Frenzy. Sweet Tooth Witch is probably the best 3-drop at common in this set. Elvish Archivist is, you know, good if we have those synergies. Rat Out for black as well, and Hopeless Nightmare, which are pretty nice. You know, we've also got the Copy of the End, which looks good. We've got Up the Beanstalk, and we've got 2 Ferocious Werefox, which can be good if your deck is trying to fight. And then we've got an Emberbath Veteran for red. Other than that, you know, we've really just got this Totenaz, which can be good or bad depending on what your red-black pool entails. Our red and our green and our black are going to be like the highest incentive colors that we can actually have like an opportunity cost to play. Now, I think when I first looked at this pool, I immediately saw that white was pretty much unplayable. Other than 3 Blind Mice, I mean, none of these cards are really anything you're excited to play, as well as in blue. You know, we have the Into the Feywild this time, but nothing overwhelmingly pulling us to blue. And in this format, I think you need to have a huge reason to be blue, like our first pool did with the Horned Lockwhale and as well the Hatching Plans. But here, I think our black probably has the most depth and, you know, the highest quality cards. So we've got the Tangled Colony, Rat Out, a Sweet Tooth Witch, Copy of the End, Conceited Witch, 2 copies of Scream Puff. Back for Seconds is a very underrated card in my opinion. And then Wicked Visitor is one I think you can justify playing most of the time just because you need 2 drops in this format in general. And Roan Grimsturch is one that I think is fine, but considering we already have a Back for Seconds, I don't think we really want to include it. But overall, we've got 10 black cards that, you know, I'm wanting to play. And then if we combine it with what I ended up doing, which was green, we've got an Agatha's Champion, and Up the Beanstalk, Elvish Archivist, 2 copies of Ferocious Werefox alongside a Howling Galefang, Root Rider Fawn, Genealogist, Beanstalk Worm, and then a Verdant Outrider. This leaves us with about 3 cards to mess around with here. So I opted to include the Prophetic Prism and then splash the Torch the Tower and the Witchstalker Frenzy, just because I think these are, you know, some of the more premium cards we could decide to splash here. And while our late game isn't that good, we do have the Beanstalk, and you know, we've got some decent interaction that could get us to the late game. So a pretty mid pool, but since things are evenly distributed, I felt like this was the best configuration to allow us to play what the best cards from each color provides. One other thing that I did discuss was some people in the Discord playing Frantic Firebolt as a splash as well. It's going to be a little bit more intensive on our mana, but considering our pool isn't that great overall, I could see us definitely working it in there. You know, maybe we remove the Howling Galefang so we're less mana intensive, or we could remove a copy of Verdant Outrider here. I think that's also sufficeable, or the Twisted Visitor, whatever you want to get rid of here. I think that's where I found was the best way to play this pool. Now let's take a quick look at the other configuration that I thought about, which was red-black, because we do have some good red-black gold cards here. So I believe this is what I ended up coming up with as an alternative configuration, and I think I tried it out one time, and then I soon learned our deck realistically doesn't have enough early game pressure to justify this option. And as you can see here, our 3-drop slot does have high quality cards, but it is very clogged. I think if we had a couple more 2-drops, this deck would be, you know, very sufficeable to potentially get 6 or 7 wins. But overall, all of the colors just feel like they're slightly missing that mark. You know, obviously I could throw in like the Non-Crescendo or the Bespoke Battle Garb. I mean, those are cards I don't think you really want to play, but if we wanted to offset the curve just a little bit, put in the Bespoke Battle Garb and remove maybe a Minecart Daredevil here, just so we don't have so many 3s. But in general, I don't think that this pool really had any clear direction for any one strategy. But if you think differently, you could definitely sell me on that option. I ended up going 4 wins with this deck, the green-black one splashing 2 red cards, and I'm very surprised by that because I don't think the pool was very strong at all. That's pretty much all I have for you guys today. I just wanted to go over these 2 pools, talk about what was possible, talk about how I navigated through it, and see if you guys have any different thoughts on that matter. I do want to just quickly go over, for anyone who has never done this before, how you can export your sealed pool or your draft pool from MTG Arena over to sealed deck tech so you can get a better view of what your best cards are, what your highest depth color pairings are to find out the best configuration for you, and also just share your pool with other people that you're trying to discuss it with. So what you want to do here is open up your MTG Arena. Assuming that we were in the event, let's pretend that our traditional draft was the MTG Arena Open. You're going to click add to decks over here, and then that's going to add everything in your pool to a deck. And then we're going to go over here to the decks, and this is actually the pool that I exported recently. So we're going to click export down here. That has been successfully copied to the clipboard. So now we're going to open back up our sealed deck tech, and then we're going to go to paste deck here, and then we can just click Command V, and then you would load in the deck, and that's going to give you your pool so you can share it with others and also just have a more clean view of what the best cards are going to be for your next event. If you got this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. As always, if it's not the goo, it's got to go. Peace.
Ooh, is that indigo?